All right, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of the NFL season and week 2 of Lock Up, Shut Down podcast. My name's Monica. Joining me, as always, is my friend Zach. How are we feeling tonight?
We're feeling good. Week 1's in the books. Podcast 2 is about to be in the books, and let's see where it goes.
Well, I would certainly speak for yourself there. Right now, I'm certainly not feeling good. In fact, I'm seething. But that's for some other time. Today, we're talking about the unexpected week 1 from the Houston Texans, Chandler Jones' early resume for Defensive Player of the Year, and a very weak performance from the so-called all-in Aaron Rodgers. But first, let's take a look at the Dallas Cowboys starting QB after a strong performance in week 1. Tell me, Zach, is Dak back?
Dak is indeed back. After throwing for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns against one of the best defenses in the league, I don't think there's any questions left to be asked about whether Dak Prescott is going to be the same when he returns from his injury. Sure, he might have thrown for 58 passes, but anytime you throw for over 400 yards and have 3 touchdowns against the defense of this caliber, I think that you'll be able to keep that performance up against almost any other team in the league.
Absolutely. I have to totally agree. From what I saw last week, I mean, he just looked incredible. He looked like himself. Sure, his throwing motion was a little bit off, but scrambling, he picked up his throwing motion later in the game. He was looking just like Dak Prescott is supposed to. I think that the Cowboys could potentially be in the run for winning the division this year.
With the weak division they have, they certainly have a shot. And we forget that they even have more receivers than they had last season with the return of Dalton Schultz, who was injured almost all of last season, and Schultz was able to catch all 6 of his targets in this game against the Bucs. And if he can become a consistent tight end with Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup out wide of him, then it adds even more of a threat for Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys team. And they'll score some points, and we'll see how well their defense is able to stop the defense from the other team from scoring points. But I don't think there's any question with how good Dak Prescott and this Cowboys team is going to be on the offensive side of the ball.
All right. Moving on from Dak Prescott, last year Russell Wilson had almost an MVP caliber season until the second half of the season when he completely fell off. However, do we think that Russell Wilson is going to have another strong season after his performance on Sunday?
I'm not sold on Russell Wilson yet. That doesn't mean I won't be sold on him by the 3 or 4 weeks from now, but after 1 week against this Colts team, I'm not sold on him just yet. I still think Pete Carroll loves to run the ball too much with his team, and with as good of a quarterback as Russell Wilson is, he's not doing enough on the field yet to convince me that he'll even be in the MVP discussion just yet for this season.
I can't exactly say that I'm too convinced on Russell Wilson either. Sure, he threw 254 yards for 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, but he was playing against a Colts defense that's great against the run, not so much great against the pass. He did look sharp. He looks like an MVP player, but I just am not certainly convinced that he's going to be the best player in the league this year.
He could be an MVP player in a different system as well, I feel like.
Really?
With the way Pete Carroll loves to play and the Seahawks rushing the ball 27 times in the game, I don't think Russ Wilson's going to have enough of an opportunity to put up those video game-like numbers like he was putting up last season. If Chris Carson can stay consistent throughout the season, as much as it pains me to say it, I think Pete Carroll is going to stay with the ground and pound than he likes with Russell Wilson throwing it in the air to Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and that receiving core that they have in Seattle.
Well, speaking of people named Carson, let's talk about the quarterback on the other side of that Colts Seahawks game. Do we think that Carson Wentz is going to flourish in his first season as an Indianapolis Colt?
I think so. With the receivers that he has and how he looked in the game on Sunday, I think he'll be just fine this season. And based on that division, I wouldn't be totally shocked right now to say that the Colts wouldn't win the division. I'm not going to call them the favorites yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if they win the division.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're going to win the division under Carson Wentz. I mean, you've got the Titans in the way, and that's a very, very strong team, no matter what the Cardinals did to them this year. I can't exactly say that Carson Wentz is going to flourish as a Colt. We're going to see the same Carson Wentz we've seen, whether he has an offensive line in front of him or not. I mean, he threw 251 yards for 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Surprisingly good. But the Seahawks last year were the worst pass defense in the league. Ultimately, he lost in the end. So we'll have to see just how well Carson Wentz can perform.
With the receiving core of Zach Pascal, Michael Pittman, and T.Y. Hilton, who didn't even play against Seattle, along with the consistent running of Jonathan Taylor, I think that those increased weapons compared to Philly for Carson Wentz, along with a new coach and new system, is going to lead him to success. And he'll be able to lead the Colts back into the playoffs. They won't go far in the playoffs, but I think the Colts will be in the playoffs once again this season.
Well, in order to make it to the playoffs, the Colts are going to have to get past that division. 2 of their division rivals, the Texans and the Jaguars, played on Sunday. The Texans absolutely crushed the Jaguars, to probably most people's surprise. Did we underestimate the Texans going into the season?
I think we both definitely underestimated the Texans.
Yeah.
If I recall last week, I think we both suggested that the Texans would be the worst team in the NFL and struggle to win a game this season. And they did more than to quell those worries that we had of them to start the season. They manhandled the Jacksonville Jaguars and put in a very impressive performance for any team, whether the expectations were high or low. That was about as dominant a performance as you'll see in the NFL.
Personally, I still don't think we've underestimated the Texans just yet. I think that they had an amazing game. I think that people have underestimated Tyrod Taylor, who's one of my favorite quarterbacks ever in the league. Tyrod threw 291 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions against the Jags. Brandon Cooks caught about 5 of those passes for 132 yards. Mark Ingram had a pretty heavy load in the running game with 26, 85, and 1. But you've got to consider what happened on the other side of the ball. Trevor Lawrence, rookie quarterback, first start ever, probably feeling the pressure. He threw 28 for 51, still threw 332 yards on a very, very weak Texans defense. Threw 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions that you can't exactly blame them all on Trevor Lawrence. There were so many drops in that game for anyone who watched it. The amount of drops that Jaguars receivers just completely blew, I was just completely flabbergasted at how bad the Jaguars were playing, and I don't think that the win isn't a testament to how well the Texans were playing, just simply how bad the Jaguars were playing.
So how bad are the Jaguars actually? Are they gonna win more than 2 games in your opinion?
I think that they're gonna be an okay team this year. I just simply think that it's gonna take them a few games to get everything together, and then they're gonna start figuring out their rhythm, figuring out what they do best. And I think that they're going to at least finish 3rd in the division. I think the Texans are still going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, if not the worst. I think they're going to go into the next draft looking for another rookie quarterback, which is unfortunate for Tyrod Taylor, considering he keeps getting replaced by rookie quarterbacks.
Tyrod has had an okay career. He'll get the job done. He won't turn the ball over like Trevor Lawrence did, whether it's his fault or not. But yeah, I don't think Tyrod Taylor is going to lead a team to anything besides a high draft pick. So Texans, they can win maybe 5 games this season, which is a big improvement on the 0-17 that I think we both predicted last week. But
Yeah.
I'm not sold on the Texans doing anything. But yeah, I for sure underestimated the Texans team this season after the preseason. I wasn't fully realizing what the Texans had on their roster and how good they would play in week 1.
Well, if there's one thing that we do always seem to underestimate, it's just how bad Kyle Shanahan is as a head coach. After him almost choking away a 41-17 lead against the Lions on Sunday, can we trust Kyle Shanahan to hold a lead anymore? I mean, come on. We had the Falcons Super Bowl, the 49ers Super Bowl. He keeps choking games away every single week, every single year. How does this man have a job?
He has a job because you have to have a lead in order to choke it. And he's come out with the right game plan on almost every occasion for his team, and can draw up plays with the best coaches in the league. He's one of the top play designers, play callers that the NFL has right now. But his room for improvement comes with in-game adjustments. I think if you look at the second half box scores of the games he's had this season, and in his career he'll struggle compared to the first half. But I think if he can adjust his in-game adjustments that he makes, he'll be perfectly fine, and we'll look at him as a great coach and forget about all the partial disasters that he's had at his numerous job occasions.
As an NFL head coach, you are at the highest level of professional football as an NFL head coach. Can you trust a coach that has bad clock management? There's simply no reason for anyone at the professional level to be this bad at holding a lead of a high margin. In your offensive play call, you should be thinking, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. You have the lead. Run the ball, run the ball. Don't turn over the ball. Play good defense. How can you simply let your team not do any of that?
Yeah, there were some definite adjustments made, like I said earlier, and I just think he gets complacent too easily and looks at the scoreboard and says, "Hey, we're up 38-10. Let's keep it going." At the halftime, and the Lions are like, "Hey, we're down 38-10. We need to change X, Y, and Z." And I think those adjustments helped Jared Goff in the second half, and he was able to throw for all 3 of his touchdowns in the second half and make this game competitive. But yeah, I think what makes him so good is his play designs and play calling in the beginning. But once they get exposed halfway through the game, the 49ers fail to gain any yardage and seem to get complacent and come down to the wire regardless of how they played in the first half.
If there's one thing that Kyle Shanahan's 49ers struggled with last season, it was injuries. If there's one person that's struggling with a lot of injuries throughout his career right now, it's young wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, Jerry Jeudy. Do you believe that Jerry Jeudy's career is going to be stunted by his injury troubles?
I don't think it'd be fair to call it stunted. I think he's definitely struggled in the early part, but I'm not too worried about all of his injuries so far in his career yet. I say if we keep it up next season, if he gets hurt early next season, that's when I'll start to become worried. But after one high ankle sprain this weekend, I'm not going to be too worried about it. And he's obviously got the talent. Before the injury, he had 6 catches for 72 yards as the Broncos' number 1 receiver. So he's got a talent whenever he's on the field, and I'm not too worried about how often he'll be on the field just yet.
I, for one, am an advocate against team scouting based on injury history or whatever. His injury history tells you absolutely nothing about a player. Obviously, yeah, you have to protect your investment or whatever, but with Jerry Jeudy in particular, I'm a little bit worried about his injury history. Before he was in the NFL, he tore his meniscus when he was in college. He suffered various injuries throughout last season, kept him on the questionable list all the time. Uh, Obviously, this Sunday he was carted off with what would inevitably be diagnosed as a high ankle sprain, and he's expected to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. Now, last year, Michael Thomas suffered a high ankle sprain. I believe it was week 1 of the season, too. Uh, he's still kind of feeling the complications from that, though. He hasn't been playing great. He's still out, I'm pretty sure, because of the surgery or whatever.
Yeah, those high ankle
be
sprains seem to take a long time to come back from, but he played all 16 games last season, whether he was questionable or not, had some load management during practices probably, but after playing 16 games in his first NFL season and starting this season on the high note before the injury, I'm not going to say I'm concerned about him just yet.
Absolutely. I'm kind of with you on the fact that, like, if he gets injured again next season, we might start to be concerned about whether Jerry Jeudy will turn out to be the wide receiver we expect him to be, or whether his career. We'll start having the Derrick Rose Yao Ming conversations about him, basically. But otherwise, I think he's going to develop into being a really great wide receiver in the league. I think he was taken way too low when he was drafted, and we'll see what happens from here. But before we see what happens, let's start talking about some of the people who were drafted this year. It's our rookie spotlight. Once again, we're going to be doing this every week, doing a different position group each and every week. This week, we're talking about the rookie running backs, particularly Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, and Chuba Hubbard. Let's start off with Najee Harris, Zach. How do you think that the career outlook is looking for the rookie running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I like the outlook for Najee Harris right now. Clear that he has the number 1 back locked up in Pittsburgh after getting 16 carries, and the only other person getting a carry was Chase Claypool. So I think he's definitely got the workload to get the development that he needs for his career. And I'm high on Najee Harris after how good he looked at Alabama last season. And I think he could become a star in the league if you give him a couple years.
Now, Najee in week 1, he did have 16 carries, but he only produced 45 yards out of those carries. No touchdowns, no fumbles. But you have to consider that this is against a very, very strong Bills defense, who has a great linebacker core and a great defensive line, and is probably going to win the Super Bowl this year. But you also have to consider that last year, if it weren't for Mac Jones getting enough votes to be a Heisman finalist, I honestly think that Najee Harris would have won the Heisman last year. If you had Najee over Mac Jones in the Heisman Final 3 last year, by all means, Najee would have been the one to take it home. He was
Yep.
absolutely incredible at Alabama this year. I'm surprised he fell as far as he did in the draft, but I'm not terribly surprised that he was drafted in the first round, unlike what most of the so-called experts would have told you. Uh, Najee was a great running back, and I think he's going to be a great running back in the NFL as a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is unfortunate to me, but besides the point.
Yep.
Let's talk.
One tough matchup for Najee Harris, but with the Steelers having the Raiders, Bengals, and Packers in the following next 3 weeks, I'm thinking Najee Harris is going to get more and more comfortable and see his production go higher and higher. Because I said earlier, the volume is clearly there, and now it's just a matter of time to see when that production is going to hit its peak. But we can move on. Let's look at
Yeah,
Travis Etienne. May
let's
not have
talk
the
about
volume.
Travis Etienne. He didn't get any. He's not going to be getting any reps this season. He's out for the year uh, because of a midfoot injury, which, again, we'll see if that injury could stunt any progression he might have. But otherwise, he was a great, really fast receiving back when he was at Clemson. Obviously, he has those ties with Trevor Lawrence, which is great for chemistry. Uh, I think Travis Etienne is going to have a great career in the NFL. I don't think he's going to have the Najee Harris level of. Honestly, I think that Najee Harris and Travis Etienne are the next, Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey to go along with Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey, who will still be in the league as these guys get better and better. We'll probably see those two groups of people being compared with one another. Najee Harrison will be compared to Derrick Henry, and uh, Travis Etienne with Christian McCaffrey. I think that there's no way that Travis Etienne is going to live up to what Christian McCaffrey has. I think Travis Etienne will turn out to be more of a Giovanni Bernard type of player in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm not sold on Travis Etienne, and that's tough to say after never seeing him in a regular season game yet. But I think that Giovanni Bernard is a perfect comparison for him at this moment after watching him in the preseason. And there's obvious benefits to playing with your college quarterback, as we saw with Jalen Waddle and Tua and Devontae Smith lighting the Falcons up with Jalen Hurts. But I don't think that the power and the size is there for Travis Etienne just yet to become a Christian McCaffrey of the NFL in the near future.
Well, he has plenty of time to develop all that muscle mass, and I'm sure he's going to be working on his size in the offseason after he's recovered from his injury. Um, Obviously, you're going to want to work on your strength after you've been injured. That's probably the natural thought process to go for. And lastly, on our list, we have Chuba Hubbard, who was taken in the 4th round by the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, he's going to be a two-back to the star-studded Christian McCaffrey, as we've been talking about. He didn't get many reps on Sunday. Only saw a few passes and a single kick return rep. However, I personally think that if Matt Rule finds a use for Chuba Hubbard as a two-back, I think it's going to be great to take the load off of Christian McCaffrey, who's been carrying that team on his back for who knows how long at this point. And I just think that's going to be great for Christian McCaffrey's career. I think that's going to be great for Chuba Hubbard's career. I think they're going to be a great two-back tandem like we're starting to see across the league. What do you think, Zach?
I'm thinking you're spot on with that. Christian McCaffrey had 21 carries, 9 catches. So saw the ball 30 times against the Jets. And if Chuba's able to come in and take a few of those carries, help save Christian McCaffrey's body for the now 18-week season, that would help both him, Christian McCaffrey, and the Panthers as a whole. We saw Mike Davis in this role last season, and he was perfect for that role, and that earned him the spot at the starting job for the Falcons and gave the spot to Chuba Hubbard. So I think if Chuba can get some opportunities He'd be great for the Panthers and everyone involved, but we'll see if Matt Rule gives him a chance in the next couple weeks after not giving him too many chances in week 1 with nobody having any carries besides Christian McCaffrey and one 14-yard run by DJ Moore. So opportunities aren't there yet, but I'm hoping they'll be open up in the next few weeks for Chuba Hubbard to try and embrace the successful Mike Davis role that he had last season.
Oh, right. Well, if there's one person right now who's seeing a lot of opportunities, it was Chandler Jones, who on Sunday recorded 5 whole sacks and 2 forced fumbles. Is Chandler Jones about to have a Defensive Player of the Year season?
I'm not going to put it at that level yet. There's too many players in the league that I can't give anyone a Player of the Year honor in week 1, but I'd definitely give him Player of the Week and say he's got potential for Player of the Year. Anytime you can get a player like Taylor Lewan to say that you kicked his ass publicly on Twitter, then you've got to be doing something right. But to call him Player of the Year at that point, I don't think I'm ready for that yet.
I mean, personally, I think that Chandler Jones is just going to continue going up from here as far as adding to his resume. And I think that by all means, he's going to be the Defensive Player of the Year once we end the season. Again, it's a little early to tell, but like you have JJ Watt on the other side of you, of course you're going to get a lot of sacks. Not to mention, he did just do that on Taylor Lewan against a really good Titans team with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. It's an incredible team to get 5 sacks against a team that like that. Oh yeah, by all means, Chandler Jones is one of the best defenders in the league, and I think he's absolutely going to make a very, very good resume as we get closer to the end of the season and as we get closer to NFL honors, that Chandler Jones is going to win Defensive Player of the Year.
He's definitely got a
in leading the Cardinals
strong week 1 case, but with as good as Aaron Donald has been the last
and TJ Watt
2 or 3 seasons along with TJ Watt, I don't think we can give Chandler Jones I don't think we can call him the favorite even for the Defensive Player of the Year honors. But it was one of the most dominant performances I've watched in a long time, especially after watching Derrick Henry go crazy last season. To hold him to 58 yards and less than 4 yards average, that was about as good as you could hope from Chandler Jones in that Arizona defense, who's helped by having Isaiah Simmons, Budda Baker, and JJ Watt alongside them. So they've got a squad and are going to be one of the best defenses in the league, but on an individual basis, I'm not ready for Chandler Jones to be Defensive Player of the Year just yet.
Well, whether or not Chandler Jones is going to be the favorite for the Defensive Player of the Year, let's start talking about a person who might be a Defensive Player of the Year's favorite opponent, Daniel Jones, who there's no explanation for just how bad Daniel Jones is. Is Daniel Jones the worst player in the league, let alone quarterback, who still has a starting job?
He may be one of, if not the worst quarterback in the league right now.
And if we're going that far, do we think that Daniel Jones is one of the worst quarterbacks we've ever seen?
I wouldn't go that far.
Apart from like Nathan Peterman and Johnny Manziel.
I still think he was the right pick for the Giants at that spot in his draft class. Because if you remember, Washington took Dwayne Haskins maybe the very next pick after Daniel Jones was selected. And as bad as Daniel Jones has been, he's exponentially better than where Dwayne Haskins is right now. So,
Haskins.
sure, his 40 turnovers in 28 games may not be great, but I'm not going to call him one of the worst just yet.
It would be 52 turnovers in 27 starts. It's 22 picks and 30 of them fumbles. I mean, how can you let a guy fumble this many times? I mean, this is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and I still remember him running down the field last season, I think with just green grass in front of him, and trips and falls at like the 10-yard line.
That will be the thing that sums up Daniel Jones' career. I think that once Daniel Jones retires, that is going to be the only thing that plays nonstop on every single sports broadcasting network whenever they're talking about Daniel Jones retiring, is going to be that play on repeat. There's no other highlights, unlike you're going to see on this screen right now. There's no other highlights except for him tripping and falling like a loser. In fact, you know what? We're going to make sure that that's the only thing playing for this entire segment.
Yeah, that clip may live on as long as the butt fumble has lived on since that happened. But yeah, if you have 40 plus turnovers in as little time as he has, that is not good. According to ESPN, it's the second fewest amount of games to reach 40 turnovers in NFL history for Daniel Jones. So I'm not high on him. I don't think Giants fans are high on him, but there's not too many other options besides maybe Marcus Mariota and Cam Newton that I would take over Daniel Jones right now. So I think the Giants are just going to have to suck it up for the rest of the season and see where they land in the draft order for next season.
We've talked about Chandler Jones. We've talked about Daniel Jones. So let's talk about a third Jones, why don't we? We're talking about the wide receiver, newly for the Tennessee Titans, Julio Jones, who had a very poor performance on Sunday, and has his own coach saying things about him like Julio is doing dumb shit that hurts the team. Does Julio Jones still have it?
You know what? It's never a good thing to be in the headlines after a game for a penalty that was called on you. But I think Julio still has it. You give him one bad week, and that with Tennessee having an entire bad week as a team, I don't think we can blame too much of it on Julio. So I'm sure frustration boiled over. He made a decision that he realizes is wrong now. He's 32 years old. He knows what he should do and what he shouldn't do. So I'm not going to lose faith in Julio just yet. With the weapons he has surrounding him, he'll be able to cause enough problems for defenses that these issues in week 1 will soon be forgotten.
I'm personally a little bit worried about Julio Jones going into the future. On Sunday, he recorded just 3 for 29 on 6 targets. Julio just doesn't seem to have the same step that he used to, you know? And when he's getting into the headlines for his own coach insulting him, that doesn't bode well for you, at least for in your particular circumstance as a member of the Tennessee Titans when Mike Vrabel is insulting you. Julio's probably going to get traded by the trade deadline.
I think to say traded by the trade deadline is a little bit too harsh on him. So he may not have the best season.
I don't think it's going to be much of his fault. But after what Mike Vrabel said this morning, there's simply no way that's gonna bode well for basically either party in this situation. Whether it's for the Titans, Mike Vrabel, Julio Jones, this might be a breakup already in week 1.
I'm not ready to say that yet. I think he may not have the best season statistically, but I think he's going to get a lot more one-on-one matchups than he would get when he was with Atlanta, due to the fact that they have so many other weapons in Tennessee. Because if you don't load the box against Derrick Henry is going to run right through you, over top of you, stiff arm you into the ground. So then you load the box up, and that leaves Julio Jones out wide. We usually with a one-on-one matchup, due to the fact that you also have to match up with AJ Brown. So I think that the Titans may not have any individual crazy numbers, but as a team, I think this offense is gonna score a lot more than the 13 points they managed against this Cardinals defense in week 1.
Now, if there's one person that most people are counting on to score this year, it's the new starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts. Do we think that Jalen Hurts was slept on?
I think Jalen Hurts was slept on, and I am all in on the Jalen Hurts bandwagon, and I'm hoping everyone listening to this right now jumps in on the Jalen Hurts bandwagon. If you compile the average of Jalen Hurts' 4 games last season, which I know is a small sample size, but if you take his averages from those 4 games and turn it into a 16-game season, he would have been top 10 in the league in passing and top 10 in the league in rushing.
He would also only have 4 wins.
4 wins, but I think with the weapons he has now, improved Miles Sanders, get Devontae Smith, who is so good with in Alabama, I think he'll lead the team to success, and that was clearly proven in that dominant 32-6 win that the Eagles had over the Atlanta Falcons, where Jalen Hurts threw for 3 touchdowns and 264 yards.
Now, I'm certainly a big fan of Jalen Hurts. I think that he was drafted way too low for the caliber of player he was. I think he was completely disrespected, getting replaced by Tua at Alabama. But frankly, I was constantly screaming at my screen every single week, wondering why the hell the Eagles weren't starting Jalen Hurts over an awful Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Against the Falcons, he put up 264 with 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and had 7 carries to add 62 more yards to his repertoire. But this was against a very, very weak Falcons defense, which is only really saved by the great middle linebacker that is Deion Jones. He had an okay stint in 2020. There were a few games where he didn't seem all right. Again, he lost 3 out of those 4 games. I just think it's too early to tell whether or not Jalen Hurts is this quarterback that people are bandwagoning for. I don't think he's this great quarterback just yet. I think he has a potential to be a great quarterback, but it's still too early to tell. Like you said, it's a very small sample size. I don't think we've seen enough of him just yet.
It is a small sample size with 5 games right now, and only winning 2 of those isn't great for him. But if you're on pace to be top 10 in any statistical category, you got to be doing something right. And to be top 10 in passing and rushing, that you got to be on a different level to do that. So it'll be interesting to see if you can keep that up over an extended period of time. But through 5 games right now, I don't have any worries over Jalen Hurts right now.
See what happens. Next up, let's talk about another player that could potentially have a very bright future. Do we think that the newfound future for Matthew Stafford as a member of the LA Rams is bright for him.
I'm not sold on Matt Stafford just yet. The
Really?
Bears defense isn't what it used to be with Khalil Mack and them being one of the best defenses in the league just a few years ago. He's got the receiving core around him that he needs, but there's not as many long balls as I would have hoped that would come with the change from Jared Goff to Matt Stafford. It seems like a lot of slants, just like the Saints were doing with Jameis Winston. A lot of short dump offs over the middle that Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson.
He still threw just 26 passes, completed just 20 of them, and still threw for 320 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. I don't think that the Bears defense is as bad as you think it is. I mean, it's a team with a great secondary, still has a good defensive line. Khalil Mack's not playing as he used to, but it's still a great defense. I mean, this is a defense that carried them to the playoffs last year, because we all know Mitch Trubisky didn't. Power rankings have had the Rams in the top 10 range basically all preseason, which comes as a surprise, but I mean, maybe Matthew Stafford is about to have a great season, if not the end of his career with the LA Rams. I think that Matt Stafford might make it to the playoffs. He could even make it to a Super Bowl by surprise somehow. I think Matt Stafford's going to revive what little he had in his career by being a member of this new team.
Yeah, I'm not thinking he's going to be bad, but I'm thinking Matt Stafford will be an average quarterback, and Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods are going to make him look really good with the yards after the catch that they'll both rack up throughout the season. I'm thinking short dump offs with some crazy plays drawn up by Sean McVay, and Matt Stafford was never going to be asked to make some crazy types of throws that we see Patrick Mahomes and those elite quarterbacks making on a weekly basis, it feels like.
Well, while we're talking about veteran quarterbacks in odd situations with great receiving cores, let's finish things off with our final topic. A big headliner throughout the offseason. We talked about him a little bit early on in the episode last week. Let's talk about the poor performance on Sunday from Aaron Rodgers. Do you think that Aaron Rodgers is as all in as he convinced us he was?
I'm not going to question Aaron Rodgers' all in mentality or not. I'm thinking that he's still all in. He's mature enough to put his team above whatever issues he has with the front office, and that this embarrassing performance is just going to be a poor game from him, and he'll be back to the Aaron Rodgers we know and love soon enough.
Personally, I feel a little bit betrayed by Aaron Rodgers because it didn't really feel like he was as all in as I was led to believe in my argument for him last week, I should say. He still threw 15 for 28, still had a pretty good passing game accuracy-wise, but he only threw for 133 yards and no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The Packers scored just 3 points in their loss. He was benched for Jordan Love. However, it was very late in the game. They were already losing by a lot, so it's probably safe to say they were doing the same thing that the Falcons did by putting in Josh Rosen on the last drive of the game. The one thing I'm mostly worried about was a particular interception where he practically threw a pass in stride to the Saints defensive back Marcus Williams. I mean, he completely overthrew his receiver, and it looked like he was intending to throw it to the Saints on that play. I personally think that Aaron Rodgers is going to show up and show out for the rest of the season. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers. He can't do, like, terrible, but I don't think that Aaron Rodgers has his head in the game like he's led us to believe.
Yeah, I'm gonna chalk that interception up to a miscommunication with his receiver running the wrong route. Whether it was Aaron Rodgers' fault or the receiver's fault is probably never going to be known, but yeah, there was a clear miscommunication on that one, which never looks good. But I'm thinking after week 2, if you get to play a Lions team that just gave up 41 to the 49ers, that Aaron Rodgers will be back throwing for 300 yards and multiple touchdowns when we're recording our next episode after their matchup in week 2.
All right. Well, we'll certainly find out in the next episode. I think that's all for this particular episode. How are we feeling about our performance in week 2?
I'm hoping that week
1.
2 goes a lot better than our predictions did in week 1.
Yeah.
But only have room for improvement after that one. So,
I mean, I certainly made a great prediction. I said the Cardinals were going to make the Super Bowl, and Chandler Jones seems to be proving me right. So
that was an impressive performance from Kyler Murray, Chandler Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, and that
one
Arizona Cardinals crew. But yeah, week 1 is, I'm treating that as week 0 and just pretending like we have a 17-week, 16-game season starting from now. So
fresh new slate.
Not too high and not too low on any team in the league right now, and let's see who can maintain it going into week 2.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be it for now. So I think it's time for us to lock up and shut down.